lower prices for sugar, meat and cereals were the major drivers of the slight decline in global food commodity prices in the month of August as the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN trims its forecast for global cereal production to over 2.8 million tons this year. Kola Masha, CEO of Babban Gona, joins me for this discussion. Kola, good to have you back with us.
Pleasure to be here.
Right, let's get right to it. Just looking through the report for the month of August, we did see a 1.1% decline year on year from the same period in August 2020 or 2023. But talk to us, what were the key takeaways for you?
Well, I think the key takeaways is that you are seeing this relatively consistent decline off of really the highs that were triggered by both, I think, a combination of COVID and the shocks that we saw from the Ukraine crisis, particularly in fertilizer prices. So that's very, very promising. Now, fundamentally, I think the good news for us locally is that we're going to continue, most likely going to continue to see these declines as we move into the harvest season, coming up until around January, February, where at that point in time, we may start seeing some food inflation coming back.
Was there any part of that data that was particularly concerning for you?
Yeah, for me in particular, I think for me, fundamentally, I think it was positive. We are seeing this consistent decline in some of these key staples. However, I think we should be cautious because there is some data coming out now. I think the US government in particular released some data recently where they've analyzed Nigeria's production from satellite, and they're seeing there has been some restriction in acreage planted. And so that could bode some bad news for us coming into probably March, April, May next year ahead of the harvest season for 2025.
All right, let's bring this back home. We've seen a good amount of flooding in some northern states. Of course, we know that we're still struggling with food security across the food producing belt. And then we have an additional layer of challenge, and that's the increase in the pump price of petrol. And from a transportation point of view, I mean, I suppose that could also be an additional challenge. But talk to us about what you're seeing, especially in the food producing parts of the country, the impact this petrol hike price could have on the food prices going forward.
Well, I think what you're going to see right now is you're going to see a significant impact on some of the the perishable food products that are typically moved relatively in short movements. We're talking about products like tomatoes, things like that. I think the reality is that transportation prices in Nigeria move because of petrol prices, but it also moves because of demand. And the reality is during this period of time, that's seen some of the lowest demand. So generally speaking, haulage costs are lowest. Interestingly, at the harvest period in November, December, even you see haulage rates jump dramatically, driven by the dramatic increase in goods that typically come in from the ports, as well as people moving a lot of agricultural produce at harvest. So I think you'll probably see a moderate impact. There may be some folks taking advantage of the opportunity, but I think the reality is that it would be relatively modest.
And we know you and I had this conversation the last time, the tariff waivers on some specific food items to help cushion the effect of food inflation, which still remains high at this point. Now, what we're hearing is that the Nigeria Customs says it's still awaiting the exemption list before the duty-free imports begin. Not sure what's going on on that side of things, but talk to us about, from a production point of view, are we seeing a ramp up in productivity, in production in the agriculture sector? What are you seeing that is new, perhaps from the last time you and I had a conversation on what Nigeria is doing to increase production within the agriculture value chain?
Well, I think, what we're seeing with really record prices. So farm gate prices are really at astronomically high levels. So what that is going to trigger is you're going to see a significant increase in the number of hectares planted for key commodities. The challenge, though, is that because at the same time, interest rates are so high, there really has been a lot of constraint in access to capital. People will be farming more hectares, but they'll be doing it very inefficiently because they won't be able to access the necessary inputs. So I think it's a little early to tell, but if I was a betting man, I'd probably say that in reality, any increase you see on the hectare side for key commodities may be offset by potentially reduced productivity due to limited utilization of inputs. And I think you're seeing this from conversations with key input providers, fertilizer providers, so on and so forth. You've seen record low demand for those products due to really lack of capital in the markets.
All right. Talk to us a bit about the work you're doing with the farmers that you work with in terms of productivity, how you're dealing with what your specific challenges are and how you're able to overcome them, and how government policies, if they're actually impacting on the work that you do.
Well, I think for us, we've been very fortunate. I think we've got really an exceptional group of partners that we've been able to work with, including the government, that's enabled us to sustain the level of impact that we have. I think we've scaled now to, at our peak, we were the single largest corn producing entity in Africa. I think cumulatively, we supported well over 400,000 farmers to double their income. But I think the key to our success and being able to weather these storms is really long-term planning. I think for us, fundamentally, we are locking in supply contracts and everything for 2026 now, right? So I think that ability to plan long-term and have the capital base to be able to make those types of long-term commitments, I think has been key to our success.
All right. Thank you so much, Kola, for talking to us today. We appreciate your time on the show. Kola Masha, CEO of Babban Gona.